Hello, everyone. It's Shane Kanto, your Wasteland reviewer, and welcome to the Wasteland, my weekly show where I take a deep dive into a particular film, and we're wrapping up the 1980s of Miyazaki's career, the first decade of him really making a big impact in cinema. And we're going to be talking about Kiki's Delivery Service, and this is a special episode because we have convened the movie club. For those who tune in to Development Hell Podcast and see all of us talk about a movie each month, this is a bonus, uh, coming together to do this episode for my Miyazaki series. So I'm excited to have Joe, Kevin, Vinnie, and Jim here. Um, Matt and Alex will pour one out for you. They will not be joining us for this discussion of Kiki's Delivery Service, but they're still in the movie club and the movie club group text, despite the fact that one of them does not reply to group texts, but I will not name them. But for those who haven't tuned into the show before, for this 231st episode of this show, wild. So we have three segments. We have coming attractions, and yes, this is coming on out on America's birthday, a perfect day for us to be talking about an aggressively Japanese film set in aggressively fantastical Europe. And it is the 4th of July. So we'll be talking about what films are actually coming out on July 2nd because they moved all the releases up that week. Except the only film coming out on the 4th of July, which doesn't count because it's a re-release, is the 41st anniversary of This Is Spinal Tap. They're re-releasing on the 4th of July. So I would honestly like to go see that in theaters that weekend. That would be a lot of fun. But we'll be doing coming attractions for July 4th week, and then we'll get to our feature film, Kiki's Delivery Service, and then we all have recommendations for all of you. But this is the beginning of a pretty stacked July, as we have a Jurassic World, Superman, and Fantastic Four movie all coming out this July. So the box office better be booming. I know Fantastic Four crashed AMC's app when they released the tickets for it. So if that's any kind of indication. But yes, so we have Jurassic World, which is really the only wide release coming out this weekend. But there's some interesting choices here. And Joe loves comedies. So Joe chose Amazon Prime's Head of State, not starring Chris Rock, but starring John Cena and Idris Elba, as would appear to be some kind of like Secret Service type folks trying to protect politicians. But Joe, why did you pick Head of State?
Well, like you just mentioned, there weren't going to be that many
No.
wide releases this weekend as we're recording this. And for me, I love comedies. My biggest challenge on Letterboxd is reviewing all the 150 essential comedies. To me, I feel like I mean, it sounds like this is going to be streaming though, right? Will it also be
Yeah,
in
it's
theaters?
coming out all. I don't think this is getting a theatrical release. It looks like it's just coming out on Prime.
I just think there is a market for comedy movies. I would love to see comedies back in theaters. I saw Friendship a couple months at this recording, and I think we need to have funnier movies back into theaters, you know. Got Happy
I
Gilmore coming on the 25th too, but that's
yeah,
going to be on streaming, so we got to get those comedies back in theaters.
I would be more excited about Head of State if the third Secret Service person was Tim Robinson. What are we doing here? But was this on anybody else's radar, or is anybody else excited for this?
I thought you were talking about the Chris Rock version when you first mentioned it, so it wasn't on my radar.
I knew this was coming out only because of wrestling. And like, I hope this movie is better than John Cena's heel run to wrap up his career. It's fired. It's been bad. It's been pretty damn bad. So, but there is Head of State coming out on Amazon. And then I know Kevin and Vinny picked this. I think Kevin by default and Vinny is legitimately excited for Jurassic World Rebirth. Yes, we're getting a what's this fourth Jurassic World movie at this point. It does have Scarlett Johansson, which grabbed my attention, and
Well,
also
although it's Jurassic World, it's not part of like it's not it's not a continuation of like the other three movies.
Really?
there is no Chris Pratt or Bryce Dallas Howard, as far as we know, or any of the original characters from Jurassic Park, uh, as far as we know.
That
But
is chaos. Chaos theory right there.
um, we do have a budding star from Wicked, starring in this one, and Mahershala Ali's also in it. But I guess I'll start with you, Vinny. Why are you excited about Jurassic World Rebirth?
I, you know what? Simply because I mean, I, I enjoyed Jurassic World, but then Fallen Kingdom and Dominion just really didn't do it for me. I wasn't I wasn't really a fan of of the whole romance between Chris Pratt and Bryce Dallas Howard as the movies went forward. Dominion just totally botched it with bringing back the legacy characters and making the movie about genetically engineered locusts. So
Locust.
so I definitely think the new I definitely think Rebirth could could be like a step in the right direction for the series, and you know, bring on Gareth Edwards as a director. I mean, I enjoyed his indie debut Monsters. I enjoyed his Godzilla, his Rogue One. I didn't see the creator, but
It looked really good.
I might have to check. I might have to check it out now. And and Rebirth is bringing back David Koepp as screenwriter, who was one who co-wrote the screenplay of the first of Jurassic Park with Michael Crichton. So I mean, you're bringing back some talent from from the original movie. So hopefully hopefully that plays in this movie's favor.
And Kevin, why did you pick this one?
Honestly, similar to what Vinny was saying, I actually haven't seen any of the Jurassic World sequels that have come out so far. I've only seen that first one. I guess I just wasn't really interested in the sequels, but I'm also a big fan of Gareth Edwards. I also haven't seen the creator, but I enjoyed those first three movies that he did. So that caught my attention when I found out he was doing it. I didn't know they were bringing back the writer from the first movie. So, and if it's not even tied into the sequel, the other sequels, I actually might be more inclined to just go see that in the theater.
The only reason a well, one, I didn't know that they got David Pope back to write it, which actually gives me a little bit more hope too. Uh, I appreciate that they're kind of stripping this back and kind of refocusing it on like we're going to an island with dinosaurs on it. Um, I want them to try different things. It's just how they try different things in Fallen Kingdom and Dominion fell flat. Did I need human clones? No, that was not necessary in my eyes, nor do I think they effectively did that. I know one person that is happy to see that Chris Pratt is not trying to romance Bryce Dallas Howard as my brother because he wants her for himself. Um, Ethan's a huge Bryce Dallas Howard fan. But
And Jessica Chastain.
I think I'm pretty sure Ethan would pick out Bryce Dallas Howard over all of the redheads that all vaguely get mixed up for each other in Hollywood. So there you go. To the point that
I can't fault him.
they had to Photoshop Bryce Dallas Howard's ass out of those posters from the original Jurassic World because she thick. Um, and they tried to make her look slimmer, and then I'm like,
No,
don't take away these assets from this movie. But you know,
it gives it more
I
bounce.
there you go, Joe.
That jiggle mechanics, boys.
Wow. But no, I'm excited about the cast. Because is it Mike Bailey or who's from
Jonathan
Jonathan
Bailey.
Bailey?
Oh yeah, I didn't
Yes,
even know who's in it.
he's Prince Fior, from Wicked,
Fiaro. Shane
Fiaro,
Fiaro.
and then Scarlett Johansson's great. Mahershala Ali. I'm glad he's doing stuff. Waiting for Blade to never happen. And them stripping this back a little bit and trying to refocus it on like the core of what Jurassic Park was meant to be, I think is probably if they're going to continue to make these movies, which they will because money.
Yeah.
It's better that they kind of like take a step back try to refocus a bit. Now, Jim, you picked one of the smaller films that we had here, which is 40 Acres, which is a new post-apocalyptic survival thriller. What kind of caught your eye about that?
Well, the field was pretty small. And as much as I would like to see ScarJo running through the jungle in high heels, I
He's like a military person in this or something, so she's not going to be wearing high heels. So
I mean, are you
That we know of.
sure? No, I just finished
I
The
have not
Last of
seen the
Us.
movie, so I cannot guarantee, Jim. But I'm
Neither
going
have
out
I.
on a limb
Neither
here.
have I. I just finished The Last of Us, and I'm kind of tepid on season 2. So post-apocalyptic catches my ear. I'm also rereading Blood Meridian by Cormac
Oh my.
McCarthy, and his name just kind of goes with post or pre. It's like Blood Meridian's almost like it's timeless almost, but
It's a little
out
too
of
close to
the
home,
field,
kind of.
I was most intrigued by the premise of this movie, and Shane sold it to me pretty well by saying the 2 lead actors are
One of
kind
them
of
should be an Oscar-nominated actor
going
at this
concerns
point.
right now, yeah, in Hollywood. So that out of the field, that's the one I would go for sure.
I picked Kill the Jockey because this Argentinian film looks really interesting, and it's about a jockey who's caught up in, like, the poster is literally a jockey riding on a horse with like a gun pointing up at him riding the horse. I'm like, poster sold me. And then some of the stills of the movie look very pastel and symmetrical. I'm like,
Ooh.
Argentinian Wes Anderson. So like that grabbed my attention enough for me to pick this, because to be frank, I I could be perfectly happy if they never make another Jurassic Park / World movie ever again. But that's wishful thinking coming from Universal, who just wants to make money. Because like, it's one of their biggest properties, and I can't blame them. They're a business, they're trying to make money. So, and Head of State and The Old Guard 2 aren't enough of a sell for me to want to go check them, be excited for them. Will I watch them? Yes. I'm going to watch all these movies like I watch all the movies. But like, I'm picking one that I actually seem to be excited about. I'm certainly excited about Superman and Fantastic Four coming out the rest of the month, so got those coming. But let's get into our feature film, which is Kiki's Delivery Service. So I do have some background. So this released in 1989, based on Kiki's Delivery Service by Aiko Kodono. And this had a budget of $6.9 million and wound up making $41.8 million over the course of its existence. Tsuneo Katabuchi was the original director of the film, and Hayao Miyazaki was going to be producing it, and then progressively took more and more control over the movie and was just like, you know what? I'm just going to direct it. And it's just like, that sounds very on brand for him at this point, being a bit of a control freak. But this is based on a lot of Swedish locations, actually, a lot of the visuals of the countryside and everything. Miyazaki added scenes to highlight themes of independence and growing up from the original book. It was meant to portray the gulf between independence and reliance among teenage Japanese girls. So like that's like was his focus on what he was trying to portray through this story. This was the first successful Studio Ghibli film upon its release. So that was reassuring for the new studio that was pretty new in the late 80s. First film dubbed under the Kokuma and Disney deal back in 1997. This book is much more episodic than the film, which is interesting because I felt the film was pretty episodic. We'll get to that in a minute. Miyazaki added actual conflicts and peril for Kiki, because apparently the book was just like a bunch of random deliveries and stuff like that. It didn't really have like losing powers and confronting that. And it definitely did not have the giant, Zeppelin thing at the end of the movie, which was like legitimately like perilous kind of thing. So all of that stuff was made by Hayao Miyazaki and put into this story. So because apparently there wasn't he's like, there's not she doesn't have enough danger or conflict in this story for this to work. So he added that. The author almost canceled the production because Miyazaki's insistence on putting more trauma and loneliness into Kiki's story. Um, and it's just like, what are you doing to my poor girl? Miyazaki's like, I do what I want. And obviously, Miyazaki won out basically making the movie. This was originally supposed to be a 60-minute TV special. And then Miyazaki's like, but what if I put all this stuff in it? And then it turned into a feature-length film. This won Best Anime at the 12th the Animage Grand Prix. So like this is honestly, I think all of the notes so far on all my episodes of Miyazaki, all of his films have won this Grand Prix award. So honestly, I think the 1980s belonged to Hayao Miyazaki when it came to this, which is very interesting too, because you know, you do have like Akira and other anime popping up. Um, the city is influenced by Lisbon, Paris, San Francisco, and Milan, all squished together. This is an alternative Europe in the 1950s in which World War One and World War Two never happened. So that was the vibe that Miyazaki was going for. And this made up city is supposed to sit split by the Mediterranean Sea and the Baltic Sea. So the idea is like this city doesn't actually exist, nor would it exist, but the idea of having the Baltic and Mediterranean together. Um, the credits were made specifically to deliver a mini sequel to make sure the audience went home happy. So if you sit through like the credits and go through and actually see like her adventures and stuff like that, because to be frank, the movie kind of just ends if you don't watch through the credits and stuff like that. Disney redubbed this in 2010 that had a lot less American ad-libbing, which Miyazaki was not happy about upon the original Disney dub. And this film incorporated 462 colors throughout the film, bringing this beautiful film to life. And to give you all a little synopsis here, so along with her black cat Gigi, which I was tempted to get Murphy, my black cat, to come sit in here with me while we were recording this, Kiki settles in a seaside town and starts a high-flying delivery service. Here begins her magical encounter with independence and responsibility, making lifelong friends and finding her place in the world. So let's go around the horn. So, two questions that I've been asking everybody on my Miyazaki episodes. Was this your first time watch, or have you seen this before? Second question is, what version did you watch? So, did you watch subbed or dubbed? And then your general thoughts. So, Joe, you're at the top around the horn here, so you're going to go first. So,
Believe it or not, outside of watching it for one of your movie marathons, and actually the very first time I saw this was actually the first, anime movie I've seen in the second grade, up to my life at this point. So it was Pokemon and then Kiki's Delivery
Kiki's Delivery
Service.
Service. There you
Up to
go.
that point in my life, it was mostly Disney and Warner Brothers and DreamWorks animation at that point. And I remember thinking at the time, this is very boring as a kid. Like, I mean, I didn't appreciate the artistry, so like it never really stuck to me, like talking about, because Miyazaki has such a wonderful, you know, um, foray of like animated movies that, you think of Wind Rises, you think of, My Neighbor Totoro, Spirited Away, and then people bringing up Kiki's Delivery Service kind of like in that statement. I'm like, I mean, I don't see that. I don't really understand that. But as I got older, I definitely appreciated it. I definitely feel like Kiki as a character. Oh, in answer to your second question, dubbed. The first one that came out when I was a kid, that was like the first big Disney, like you said, big Disney thing.
Yep.
So it seemed like a big deal. And they even promoted it like this was the new movie that came out, despite the fact that it came out like 10 years earlier at that time.
Yeah.
But yeah, general thoughts continuing. Like I definitely appreciate the aspect of growing up. I feel like that really sticks, and independence is so strong within this movie. Um, And it's funny that you mentioned the ending being changed from the original premise because I just can't imagine there being any issue with that ending as we saw it. I feel like as a moviegoer, I love how the last scene ended without those credits because is it okay if we go into spoilers or should I wait?
Well,
What do
we're
you
just
think?
giving general thoughts at this point,
Okay.
so yeah. I
But
want to
the
make
ending's
sure
really
everybody
good. We
gets
go on to the next guy.
that next guy is Kevin. Kevin.
All right, Kevin.
So
Okay. I would like to discuss that ending later too, though.
yes.
So this was my first time seeing it. This I saw it for the first time this morning. I did watch the original Japanese audio version with subtitles. I usually prefer to do that if I'm watching a movie for the first time. This isn't something I had seen as a kid. So I was curious about that. Although I did go back and rewatch the last 10, 15 minutes or so of the dubbed version, which I guess is the second version of the dub. Uh, as you mentioned before, that
Yeah,
there was a redub
I guess it depends because where did you watch was it Max?
on Max. Yeah,
I'm assuming it's the redubbed 2010 version.
it seemed to be when I googled it after I watched the movie. It
Okay.
looked like it was the redub. I only rewatched those last 10, 15 minutes, but I wasn't really a fan of some of the changes they made with the dubbing. I
Mhm.
don't think it really changed the course of the story or anything like that too badly. It's just one of those things where it felt like a lot more silences were getting filled by random sound, like it was Disneyfied or something. I mean, it was produced by Disney.
Fair.
No, I think I would have enjoyed it if I had seen it that way for the first time. I don't think there was anything wrong with it really, but having just watched the original version and then seeing that back to back, I have some thoughts about that. But yeah, I really enjoyed it.
How about you, Vinny?
So this was my second time watching it. The first time I watched it was I was like 6 or 7. I watched the dubbed version. Because like I guess since Disney released that version, um they might have shown a trailer for it on a previous Disney VHS that my brother and I had. So we were like, we should, let's go rent Kiki's Delivery Service, and we rented it, and we enjoyed it well enough, not as much as like other Disney movies, but we liked it. But obviously now that I'm older and I'm watching it again, I have a greater appreciation for it. Um, having seen a lot of Miyazaki's other movies, this is this isn't a criticism, but like Kiki's Delivery Service, it's definitely one of his less like it's definitely not one of his more complex movies again, but that's not a criticism because what I want to say about that is that I like how you know with his more complex movies like The Wind Rises, Howl's Moving Castle, Spirited Away, ones like that. I like how he can take a simple coming of age story like in Kiki's Delivery Service and just charm you and sweep you away every bit as much as he can with a movie with a movie like Spirited Away or the Boy and the Heron. Um I really enjoyed the voice cast. One of my favorite. I think my favorite is Phil Hartman as Gigi because I think the only other voice acting I've heard him do was Lionel Hutz in The Simpsons. And I mean, he really is a great he really is a great voice actor, and it's a shame that he's not with us anymore because I really do think he could have given us like other great and like really great animated voice work. And yeah, that's all I'll say about it now. But yeah, I was happy to have the opportunity to watch this again because I really did enjoy it more now that I'm older and I'm able to like really look into it deeper than I could when I was younger.
But yeah, just a real quick aside. Uh rest in peace, Phil Hartman, who was tragically murdered shortly after doing his dubbing for this movie by his wife. And very tragically, because this was right around the time of Jingle All the Way as well. And my God, he plays the most amazing I want to punch you in the face neighbors in the history of movies.
Oh, these
And
cookies are so good.
oh, they're so good.
Put that cookie down.
Put the cookie down.
I got Johnny Boy's Turbo Man months ago. It's nicely
And
nestled under our tree.
oh my God, every line delivery in that movie is just like, it's safely nestled under the tree. It's just like, you smug son of a bitch.
Yeah, and like it's funny how he did voice work for The Simpsons because his character in Jingle All the Way is pretty much Ned Flanders if Ned Flanders was an absolute jerk.
Yep. Which I think Homer thinks he is, but
Yes.
but
So
Jim, what do you
what I'm holding it in, but Vinny, you gotta watch The Brave Little Toaster. He has a couple of voice roles in that movie, and I think that will fulfill your need to see him do more voice work.
I actually have seen that, but not since I was young.
He's got some great
know,
characters in that one.
Same here.
suicidal air
I don't even
conditioners and
remember
all.
it.
That one.
Brave Little Toaster. But Jim, what are your general thoughts on Kiki's Delivery Service?
Well, just to touch on that, it's John Lasseter's first feature, right? Brave Little Toaster. So I should see that movie just as a piece of history. This was my first time
Recommended for the
watching
movie
Kiki.
club.
Yeah, I'll nominate it one of these days. First time watching Kiki's Delivery Service. As a general rule, I don't like dubbing. I think if a film's going to get away with it, animated film. It's not a cartoon. Although this is closer to a children's movie than all the other Miyazaki I've seen. Friendlier to a younger audience, as opposed to Spirited Away, which I think would be nightmare fuel to show a toddler. Like that film is weird. So I watched the original Japanese dub with subtitles, and I get what you're saying, Shane, about the episodes, and I was kind of adrift. Like I couldn't figure out what to expect. We were halfway through the movie, and I was like, I have no idea what's going to happen next.
Yes.
So on the one hand, Miyazaki taking it over and making it his own thing kind of threw me because I couldn't find a rhythm in the film, you know? Of course, the animation was beautiful. I appreciated some more mature themes coming in, but I don't even know that it was really necessary. There's always that question of like, do you need a big action sequence to climax the movie? Like, do you? I don't know. Do you really need a central conflict? Probably yes. Do you need an antagonist? There really isn't one in this film, right? I will be thinking about this movie for a while, because and I tend to overthink when it comes to movies like this, where I probably shouldn't. But like, I have questions as to why she started losing her spoilers, why the conflict started, and how it got resolved.
So I guess because that's one of the biggest things is like her losing her powers, and then not being able to hear Gigi talk anymore, which apparently are two separate issues. I did look it up. Apparently, her not being able to hear Gigi anymore is because she got older. Apparently, like what that's supposed to mean is like children can still have those kinds of connections with their animals and like the cat, but like her just naturally getting older and going through puberty and growing up, she moved past that.
That was my assumption, actually. Yeah.
And then her losing her powers was, very Spider-Man 2. Just look at that. Sam Raimi borrowed from Kiki's Delivery Service about losing powers.
And Kirsten Dunst is in both.
Oh yeah.
To be fair, though, it did happen in the comic. That was actually something that did happen in the comics first. So I guess you can argue Kiki ripped off Spider-Man And then Sam Raimi ripped off Kiki, which did rip off the Steve Ditko, Sam
But who did it? Who did it first? Endless
Stanley.
loop.
He's the man.
Chicken or the egg.
But I guess those are some interesting things we could start with because, like, to be fair, first half of this film was just a lot of just like wandering and setup and just like her doing her thing. Like, it's really the third act of this movie where like things like really happen. And I thought that was an interesting development. Well, I guess before we dive into this, I guess I should quickly. I have never, I never watched the whole Studio Ghibli film until I was an adult. I had never watched any of these as a kid. I had seen big chunks of Princess Mononoke as a child, because my
Wow.
neighbor was watching it when I was over hanging out with his daughters, and I have that cursed boar burned in my brain and have been remembering that since a child. And I finally watched Princess Mononoke. I'm like, oh my god, it was this movie. So I didn't have really experience. I've watched this movie probably 4 times though as an adult. And I did watch the dub with Kirsten Dunst and Phil Hartman. And I this is such a charming film. And I think we'll start with some of the later at like elements and like hitting on Jim what you were talking about. I was devastated when she couldn't hear Gigi anymore. I'm just like, because like that was her best friend and like her only friend. Um, with Nerdy Kid, who likes planes, who probably has autism. But really developing that. But like that was such a devastating moment where like she wakes up and he's just like meow. And it's just like he's just a cat now. And now he's having his own little cat family. It's like hanging out with a cat, the cute white cat from across the street. Um, and then her like losing her powers and losing her confidence and not being able to do that. I think it's a really interesting parallel of, I think this is very particular. Like, this is a kind of puberty film. This is a coming of age story and trying to process that. The whole entire idea of like, you're ready to. This is wild too. This is very much of the time. Especially an interesting thing for like Americans to watch this because I imagine parents sounds like I need to send my 13-year-old off for a whole year by themselves. And that kind of thing is very interesting. But like this whole entire journey, and I think her struggling losing her powers and stuff like that was a really important part of this process. And like she felt isolated, and this I'm pretty sure this is the part where probably the author of the book was really upset about like what are you doing to Kiki. But like it was a really impactful moment I felt like for this for the film to work that way. But I did find it very interesting that those two things were completely unrelated, despite the fact that this film never really hints at that. Except for the fact that she gets her powers back, but that she never hears Gigi again. Which is sad, but at least they get to hang out with Gigi's little kittens. Which was a very nice little moment. But I guess this is what I guess Jim, going back to you because you were the one bringing this up, what were like the things going through your head with this?
Okay, so when the conflicts were introduced, kind of,
Mm.
yeah, I also was not happy that she couldn't hear Gigi anymore. That was like the most upsetting moment of the film, I think.
Yeah.
Not her friend. What did she call him? Tombo? What did she call her friend?
Tombo, yeah.
Tom, yeah.
Like he was close to death, hanging onto a rope, and I was like, I don't really care. I was more worried about her being able to hear Gigi. Yeah, and I was kind of hoping that would come back when she regained her confidence. But I kind of, I mean, I kind of like that. There was, I was watching and discussing with the girlfriend, and I was like, she just seemed depressed at certain times in the movie, and I remember being a teenager and just being depressed and not really being able to explain why. Like things are different. And I mean, she could be homesick. That's one. She could be lonely. She didn't have any friends. she could miss Gigi. Her business was not really booming, but at that point in the movie, I knew nothing too bad was going to happen because of how the kindness of strangers had propelled the story so far. So I knew the general tone was going to be optimistic. But yeah, I was very upset about that. The best friend losing her best friend. And there were a couple of moments that might have gotten lost in translation. I'm curious. Kev, you said you watched the original audio, right?
Yeah, and actually specifically I was going to mention, it's funny you mentioned the word homesick, because when I went back to rewatch the end of the movie, I noticed at the very end, the final scene, not to jump too far ahead, uh, after the end credits, when you have the little sequence with her parents reading her letter. In the original version, the final line, I wrote it down, is there are still times when I feel sad, but all in all, I sure love this town. And then in the English dub, at least in the redub, the final line is there are still some times when I feel a little homesick, but all in all, I sure love this city. The tone,
So I guess
the
they
whole
kind of
tone
like
in which she
spelt it
said it
out a
was
little
different
bit.
too, right? She sounds a
It's
little
more
more
poetic.
upbeat at the end of the dub, I'll say.
Yeah.
She sounds a little bit more content with herself, I'd say, in the dubbed version. But she specifically says homesick in the dub. So that was something that was changed, I guess, to make that a little more overt. I don't know.
Interesting. Which I can't imagine that she couldn't be. And she's like a young teenage girl that's been gone from home for for a long time. And I think it's made pretty clear at the beginning of the movie that she has a good relationship with her family and like she loves them and stuff like that. It's not like, can't wait to get the hell out of here. But Joe,
Right.
what were you going to
I
say?
will say, oh, go ahead. Yeah.
I was going to mention how, I mean, we were watching Pokemon at this time, and they just sent Ash Ketchum, who was 11 years old, out into the world to just collect these giant monsters that can like kill each other, basically.
Yeah.
So I think it's just typical for the Japanese to do that at that time. But it's interesting how we're talking about the ending, and the thing that really drives home, because you're right, there's a lot of kind of meandering going through, but like good stuff, talking about like growth and learning. And I feel like that's what you appreciate from storytelling and animation, is that you could do more than have kid pacing what Disney's doing. But when you have the climax, that climactic Zeppelin fight, I mean Zeppelin, being destroyed, you're thinking like it's almost like if you got rid of Monstro from Pinocchio. Like I feel like you can't really do that. Like I feel like it kind of brings the movie together. And that last scene, it's funny we're talking about how like, her not hearing the cat and her hearing it as her powers coming back, because guess what? We don't hear the cat, right? And I think that's so beautiful because it's really what you take. Does she hear the cat? Does she not hear the cat? That's great cinematography. That's great filmmaking, in my opinion. That's like those rare movies where rare scenes where you're watching a film, you're like, that's art, like, and it's funny because like the original author can literally just say, yeah, she can't hear him. Like, that's just how it is. Whereas, me personally, I'm like, it could go any direction. The top can fall in Inception, or you don't need to hear what Scarlett Johansson tells Bill Murray in Lost in Translation, or you don't see what's inside the
But
briefcase
you
in Pulp
can if you put on closed captioning.
Fiction. Oh, you do? Oh, son of a gun.
Just don't do it, Joe.
Nah,
Just enjoy it
nah.
as it is.
Okay, thanks for ruining that. Shane.
Leave that suitcase closed, Joe. Just leave
Keep
it
it closed. We don't
I
need to see if
did.
there's I hope there's no closed captioning saying what's inside the suitcase.
I did get the impression that Kiki was the only one that could hear Gigi, though.
Yeah. Well, and it's a personal connection with her cat.
Right.
Because like her parents can't hear the cat at the beginning. She's just chatting away with Gigi, and Gigi, like her parents, just like, oh look, meow 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 meow.
Yeah, and
meow.
I think it's like her aunt or something in the beginning of the movie. I don't even remember the line. Someone has like a throwaway line about she used to have a connection like her with animals when she was younger. And I think that's the only type of foreshadowing we get that she might
Mhm.
stop hearing Gigi later, but I didn't even think about it. Like the movie doesn't really set it up, I'd say. And I kind of like that though.
And
Was it her aunt or her mother?
It could have been her mother. I don't
And
remember
I'm
who said
curious
it.
as to whether you guys have an opinion about this. I got the impression that her mom also lost the ability to fly, and that broom has
Yeah,
been sitting in a closet for years, and that's why she gave it to her. I don't know if you guys have any opinions on this.
I was wondering the same.
I don't know, her potioning seemed a little shaky uh, at the
She was
beginning with
making
like the
bombs,
explosions and
yeah.
stuff like that. Um, that's an interesting thought, and I these are things that I didn't really think about, to be perfectly honest. And I think that's a positive to say about the film is that there's layers here that you could pull back on if you really wanted to and really think about it in a deeper way. Or you could just watch it for, the fun, charming romp of a film that doesn't have too high a stakes. It doesn't have until a giant zeppelin can become crashing down and kill a child. But and you have that big heroic moment, which I do like that being included in there, like having that push for her to get her flying power back and being able to catch her friend, which just barely, she just barely got him. I'm like, that was a tense moment. Um, he almost was splat, and that would have been really sad. But I probably my biggest potential negative about this film is, there's moments where it's meandering, it's very loose narratively, and it takes a long time for it to like, Jim, to your point, is like, what is this movie after a while? Because then it does choose to have a conflict and really focus on that and close that loop later. But, I enjoyed the shenanigans, with like the little toy and then Gigi having to pretend to be the toy and meeting a new dog friend and, the crows, um, and the crow lady, and all of those moments and the older woman that she develops this relationship with. um Also, there's some really bratty kids in this movie. I just want to smack them, um and stuff like that. And her first night away, she winds up on this train, sleeping in some cow's breakfast. um that was like a fun little moment. Like, you have all these little moments, and her realizing her potential of like, she meets this pregnant woman, which also her husband can talk, which you find out much later in the movie. He's a pretty quiet character. Like, it just this is the kind of film that this isn't big sprawling fantasy. This isn't like this. It's very interesting that this and Totoro came out back to back, because I feel like this is like kind of taking a step back and just having a very like intimate, personal kind of story about these kids with fantasy around it. Obviously, she's a witch. That's just not like common stuff happening. She's doing magic. But being able to focus on that for sure. And there's a lot of enjoyable elements to this film. Does anybody have anything in particular that stands out to you that you didn't like or didn't work for you about the film?
Well, like I mentioned before, I think it does kind of meander a little bit. It does have an episodic feel to it, which I think is one of those situations where you could see why Miyazaki hijacking this film makes sense, because I think it does seem reasonable that him adding the Zeppelin, and even the, getting rid of her powers to create conflict, in a sort of way that it's funny because like I just think about how, in my opinion, a better movie is Howl's Moving Castle, right? And that kind of deals with a similar idea of magic in the real world. And that movie can also uh, have a bit of a. I don't even know if Miyazaki did he direct Howl, or was
Yes,
that a different one?
Yes.
It was
he directed
okay.
it.
It was Miyazaki, so he had more control over this one. Yeah, so I think about that and I draw comparisons. I never like doing that, but like in this situation, you kind of do, and I see how that's kind of the improvement and what you know Cal would run, what's the expression? Kiki walks so Hal can run. That's kind of just how I feel when I'm watching Kiki's, delivery service.
Well, it is important to realize too, and I have this context because what I'm literally doing with this series is going through their filmography and seeing how they progress over time is like, you know, Nausicaa and Castle in the Sky were bigger, broader stroked fantasy movies that feel like they're refined by the time Princess Mononoke and Spirited Away come around. And you have, you know, I feel like Totoro was probably the first one that was like, wow, this really feels like trademark Miyazaki in terms of like having that like stamp on it. And Kiki's one of those films. I just think it was very interesting. It's those two back to back, and then it's Porco Rosso, which is going to be my next episode. And then a chunk of time, and then it's Mononoke, Spirited Away, Ponyo, like back to back to back. Howl's Moving Castle before Ponyo. Because to be frank, I'm not gonna have that many episodes of the series because he doesn't have a whole lot of feature films. And I can't see any of the shorts because they only play at the Studio Ghibli Museum in Japan. Because he refuses to commercialize them. Which is very admirable. So when I go to Japan one day and I watch a bunch of them, I will come back and do episodes.
Nice.
For the show. Like, I think this is an interesting progression, and I 100% believe that this and Totoro, if I were to be asked to show a kid a Miyazaki movie first to get them into it, it should be one of these two. I think there's just like an accessibility, and I think Totoro is a better film. I think it's a little bit more focused and a little bit more refined, but like I really enjoy this movie a lot. And despite the fact that like yeah, it's loose and episodic for probably like 2/3 of it, before it really gets into what it's trying to say. But I guess, are there any particular things that really stood out that we haven't touched upon that any of you want to bring up about the film?
I was just going to go back to what Jim was mentioning earlier because I kind of agree about specifically the character of Tombo. If he had been maybe expanded a little bit more, I might have cared about him a little bit more. I felt similar when he was falling off the Zeppelin at the end because she's going to catch him, right? And he's kind of just there.
This is
like
not that kind of movie.
Yeah,
where like kid was gonna die brutally.
he was kind of
Yeah,
just the damsel in distress for that scene, and he served the plot. But I kind of wanted a little bit more from him, I guess. And
There
it's
was
a
a
minor
moment where I
complaint.
was like, there was a moment where I was like, is this the Hindenburg? Like, are they gonna? And then I was like, no, it's not gonna blow up.
And then this
Oh,
turns
the
into like
humanity.
then it's like the
They
opening
do say
scene
that
of
on the
Boy and the
TV.
Heron, and just like flames and shit everywhere, and just like I did not expect this.
Instead of saying,
yeah.
oh, the humanity, they could be like, oh, the
Yeah.
wizardry. Oh, the magic tree.
Which I understand. Like, yeah, I don't think he was a particularly great character, but I think what he means to Kiki is that, especially after she can't hear Gigi anymore, like this is her only friend.
That's
Like,
what I was going to get at. Yeah.
This
It
is like
serves a purpose still because you're seeing it from her perspective. And she even says herself, like, why can't I form a connection with these people?
yeah,
Essentially.
he's definitely a go outside nerd
Well,
kind of character.
well, I mean, like at the end, her not being able to hear Gigi anymore, and then eventually becoming best friends with Tombo. I mean, you could even see that as something we all go through with transitioning from like your friends in early childhood to your friends in your teenage years.
Awkward phase. Yeah.
And then she'll be kicking him to the curb, and meeting her college friends, and then her work friends, unless he turns out to be her Kevin, since Kevin and I have known each other since 6th grade.
Oh.
So, but like, I think it is an important piece to it, and he might not have a lot of characterization, but I think the key piece is that he loves flying,
Yeah.
and I think that's an important connection that the two of them share. And I love the credit sequel moment where like he's riding his bike and has his wings for his bike and they're flying together. And like that's a
That
really
was
special
nice.
moment.
Yeah.
And if they made an actual sequel, I feel like they would have like a really strong relationship and you would actually see that. Um, but it never seemed like Miyazaki had any interest in making sequels to any of his stories, which he'll just give you a credit sequel and you can be done with it. Because honestly, that happens a decent amount. Um,
Yeah, this
I
doesn't
just
need a
want
sequel anyway.
I just want to bring up like because I feel like you have to bring this up every Miyazaki film is the music. The music's always beautiful. It's always so well done. And Joe Hisaishi just delivers something so impactful that really captures the essence of this whatever the setting is, whatever the tone he's going for.
Is he a frequent collaborator of Miyazaki's?
And like I'm pretty sure he composed at least every single film so far that I've done feature film, I think since Nausicaa, he's been his composer. So like he really understands like what Miyazaki wants out of it. And the music in his films are incredible, every single one of them. Some of them are a little bit more memorable than others. Like I was literally recorded my Totoro episode earlier today. And like the music in Totoro was just like and the Totoro, Totoro song that they have in it is so damn catchy. But like the music in his films I legitimately think I would put Joe Hisaishi up there with like the greatest composers because he just had like banger after banger after banger of film composing. It's just something really special. And when you can have a score that really accentuates your film, it makes it stand out. And this isn't, I don't think this is most memorable score, but like it really does the work. He's because what Miyazaki's always trying to do is very specific about the setting to his films and the world building, and you want to have something that captures this strange, like fusion European kind of place. And I think that the atmosphere of the film, the tone, the music, the setting, and just the absolutely gorgeous animation, which I feel like is going without saying, like the ocean's wet and Hayao Miyazaki's movies look incredible. So, so controversial thing to say. But anything else anybody had to go ahead, Jim.
If we have time, I mean, I could keep
Yeah.
going. Joe brought up, I think, Pinocchio and Monster the Whale, right?
Mhm.
So, like, if I'm sorry if I talk about the hero's journey like all the time. It's been a minute, I think, since we talked about it. But like, Jiminy Cricket is like Pinocchio's little spirit guide on the journey.
It's Gigi.
If it's Gigi in this movie, that's extra tragic because at some point you lose your like
Your conscience.
moral compass. There was a
Yeah.
line, I can only quote the subtitle in English, but she's like running around packing her bag, all excited to leave home, and the cat's sitting there straight, like ramrod straight, and he goes, I think it's better to leave with a sense of decorum and dignity, quiet dignity, or something like that. Like it's like what an old man would say to you, or something like
Yeah.
that. So I was just thinking about the Golden Compass.
Oh, I was literally just gonna bring that up.
Yeah. Do you want to take over, Vinny? Like,
Oh no, I was just gonna say how like I mean I'm sure it's purely coincidental, but like one kind of cool connection between Kiki's delivery service and the Golden Compass is that like I don't know how many of you have like read the Golden Compass books or have seen the show, but like in the parallel universe of the story, people have what are called demons, and they take and like it's pretty much like their spirit, but in like human form. And what happens is that a person's demon is is the opposite sex of what their human form is. And like the whole thing about it is that they is that there is that what when a person is young, a person has, when you're a child, you haven't come into your own yet. You're having all these different experiences, so your demon is constantly shifting into different animals until you reach adulthood, and your demon takes on a permanent shape, and like your demon also sort of acts as your conscience, which is what Jiminy Cricket was in Pinocchio, and what Gigi is pretty much in Kiki's Delivery Service.
Just to punctuate that, there's a point. I don't want to spoil the Golden Compass, but there's a point where she's separated from her familiar, her demon in the Golden Compass, and it's really traumatic. At least in the book, it was. I can't remember how they handled that in the TV show, but yeah, like severing that connection was very, very traumatic and very sad for the protagonist of that. So again, I'm probably kind of ruminating a bit too much on that, but I mean, as Miyazaki, a grown man, is making this movie, I feel like there are some deeper layers probably of meaning behind those choices. The last thing I just wanted to say, Shane, is that like you were talking about his stamp, the Miyazaki stamp. Mm-hmm. They're all kind of here. Like the natural world is is really important, or the contrast between the village and the big city.
Yeah.
Trains, and then the protagonist being younger, or like it being a coming of age kind of journey or story. It's all there. It's just not refined in the way that other movies of his are,
Yeah, and the environmental elements are not as overt, because like some of them is just like and coming at you with it. But I do appreciate. But Joe, you wanted to add
just one thing. I just think it's interesting we are bringing Pinocchio, which is kind of like the grandfather if we think about like the conscious or like familiars and Golden Compass, because if we really want to go into the lore of it, if you go to the original Pinocchio story, Pinocchio kills Jiminy Cricket and haunts him as
I
a
didn't know
ghost.
that.
If we're talking
I
about
didn't know
characters
that either.
that
I didn't know
fight their
that.
conscience, right? Or kill their conscience, he's literally fighting his conscience, right? Because he's kind of an asshole. Excuse my language if this is being posted on YouTube. He's kind of a jerk. um in the original story. So I just wanted to bring that up because I think if we're talking about teenage characters, or we're talking about these types of characters, it's interesting, we were rebellious, and even to a certain degree, going back on the conversation about the her friendship with the boy, it kind of reminds me about Inside Out too. And what I love about that movie, is that one line where a Joy mentions that, Friendship Island has become so much bigger than Family Island. And that's because of connection. That's because as teenagers, you want to connect more with people. And, it's kind of an interesting connection there. And Pixar and Ghibli are two studios that have shared a lot in common, or, outright have said they pretty much just, fanboy over Miyazaki work in countless interviews.
Well, I think that's an interesting point too, because like if I looked at my brain, I think my Friendship Island would probably be bigger than my Family Island, because I spend a lot
It's
more
hard to
time
believe for
with
Italians.
It's not a very traditional thing for Italian
I know.
Americans to be that way. But that's a whole other story. But I do think that it's important to realize that, like, obviously this is based off of a book, and I did not look into the influences of Kodono and her writing for the initial book, but Miyazaki has been heavily influenced by other big fantasy stories of Earthsea and Lord of the Rings and stuff like Dune, and for some of his films. So it's like it wouldn't surprise me, because when did the Golden Compass come out?
The three books were published, but between from like the mid 90s to the early 2000s.
Interesting. So this definitely predated that.
But
Um,
then if you want to talk about his influences, like also with Ponyo, that was clearly influenced by the Little Mermaid.
mhm. You definitely see those kinds of influences and those kinds of stamps on things. But that's the thing, because even the great all-time great filmmakers had influences. It's like you see the Scorseses and the Spielbergs that are still making films today. They had their idols that they turned to. Famously, Akira Kurosawa, probably the most famous director, along with Hayao Miyazaki in the history of Japanese cinema, was heavily influenced by John Ford. And it's just like you have these influences and you can see these stamps. And I think it's interesting how a great filmmaker can draw upon them and do something unique and special with them, because like this doesn't feel like it's directly ripping off or homaging things. It's pulling ideas and making something of its own, and it's drawing upon a lot of those like witch ideas and stuff like that. Doesn't matter what the broomstick is, could be a janitor, could be the cleaning guy at the end, just like a regular broom, and grab it and fly on it. And how many times have we seen witches with black cats? It's just like these are elements that obviously Keidono pulled upon for her stories and that Miyazaki brought to life, but puts his own twists and perspectives on it. And I think this is a really impactful, wonderful film. And you know, Hayao Miyazaki has had a whole entire career full of really impressive works. There's not a single one of them that I think anybody would say consistently this is a bad movie. And I think that's really special, and that's really hard to do when you were making films since the 1970s. He hasn't made as many as a lot of filmmakers, but it's a really impressive filmography. But does anybody have any final thoughts for Kiki before we wrap this up and head to recommendations for people?
Yeah, I'll just say one thing that I noticed while I was watching the movie that I took note of is that a lot of the adults didn't seem to be phased by her being a witch. So I kind of got the impression that it's something that in this world is kind of just a known thing. I liked how they handled that, and I guess that does tie into her going through her journey as she comes of age. It's kind of an allegory for that. I guess the adults all understand that. That's
I just
why.
think it's a really fun idea too, that like she made a business out of this. She became an entrepreneur. It's a smart idea. It's like, hey, if I could fly, I could deliver stuff a lot quicker than others. It's like Amazon would have a real competition if witches decided that they were just going to deliver stuff on broomstick. So there you go.
They could do
And then it'll be
they could do that in October.
Tom Hanks would have never crashed in Castaway if they just had a witch do it.
there you go. The moral of the story: Castaway would not exist as a movie if witches existed in context. Um, but it's a fun, charming little film for sure. But let's go around the horn and give some recommendations to everybody to wrap up this show. So just briefly, what you would like to recommend to everybody. So Joe, you go first.
So we're going into like recommendations of what we're currently watching, right?
Well, like what I asked for before we started recording. So
Yep.
what movie were you going to recommend? Yep.
Oh, absolutely. I've been recently just every day trying to write letterbox reviews, and if there's a free movie that shows up on Roku or Tubi, and recently I was a little blown away. I've always wanted to watch this movie. I finally did. It's called Brigsby Bear. I believe it was made in 2017, produced by Lonely Island, and directed by Kyle Mooney. Tells the story of a character who's obsessed with an 80s era TV show. And that's all I'm going to say about it, because I will go as far as to say there was one movie up to this point in my life that I was convinced had the best opening and would never be topped, and that was Up. This comes right with it, where the first 10 minutes of this movie really gives you a gauge and changes everything and really sticks with you as far as what you're going to be watching for the rest of this film. And it's got an endearing cast, and it's got a wonderful story overall with some really interesting themes. And Kyle Mooney plays such a fantastic lead character. I could gush about this movie if 10 years comes along and we put it on for movie club, or if we just want to like recommend it for movie club at some point, I would love to dig into this one because I actually for a movie that came out within the last 10 years, it's like Everything Everywhere All at Once, where I just gave it the 5 stars. I was like, I don't care. It's peak cinema for me. 5 stars.
It is. It is such a unique and interesting film, and I remember seeing that randomly in a theater. I was probably one of the only people in the theater when I went to go see it. It was such a special experience. I'm like, nobody is talking about this. It's so
Seriously.
funny because my wife Jess actually made a letterbox list of movies I love that nobody talks about. And like if I made a list like that, I think Brigsby Bear would probably be
Please
on there
do.
somewhere. So Kevin, what would you like to recommend?
So my recommendation is going to be a movie called The Bandwagon from 1953. It's a musical comedy starring Fred Astaire, which took me by surprise. I watched it recently. I've been slowly getting into more and more musicals. It's a genre I mostly ignored uh, for most of my life. But recently, I've watched Singing in the Rain. We did the Red Shoes for the movie club.
Yeah.
So I figured I'd give that one a shot. And I really enjoyed it. It's really pleasant. It's kind of a funny movie. I recommend that one.
Yeah,
It's
it's fun
classic.
going back and watching. Like I've watched Top Hat and a few other like Fred Astaire, Ginger Rogers films, or like
Yeah, it's
really
Fred Astaire
special
and
kind of stuff.
Sid Charisse. I don't know how you say her name. I think that's it.
And it's crazy to like what Fred Astaire's one of his last movies was Towering Inferno, um, where he played a grifter in the building that's on fire. So, but yeah, I would second recommendation going to check out some of those old Fred Astaire films. Vinny, what series did you want to recommend to everybody?
Well, I want to recommend one that I've heard a lot about over the years, but just never bothered to watch it. Schitt's Creek. I started it last weekend. I'm almost done with season two. It's very easy to get through. You could watch like 3 episodes in a night when you come home from work, because like each episode is only like 20 minutes. But for those of you who don't know, it's about a family of multi millionaires who lose all of their wealth and must rebuild their lives in like some of the strangest ways possible, while living in a motel in a rural town. The whole cast is great, but Catherine O'Hara, her comedic abilities are working on a whole other level in this show. And if you haven't watched it, I highly recommend starting it. You'll laugh your butt off.
Moira Rose is one of the funniest television show characters in recent memory. God, she's so hilarious. And like Jess and I binged that during COVID and
Mhm.
absolutely loved it. Even like Chris Elliott as Roland Schitt, because that's his family's name is Shit. Um, it's just so wild. Um,
Don't worry, it's her brother.
I just love it's like, ew, David. Um, the whole entire family, Eugene Levy, Annie Murphy, uh, why am I blanking? Is Daniel Levy?
Daniel Levy, yeah.
Yeah, and it's just all four of them are so fantastic, and even like the supporting characters are so much fun in that show. Love that show. I'm pretty sure what did Jess and I binge watch that, Friends, 30 Rock, and I feel like one other show. There's a lot of laughs to be had. Because I had never watched Friends before. So that was an interesting experience. So, and then Jim, what would you like to recommend to everybody?
I'm gonna need some help because I'm recording on my phone and I want to mess it up. But the name of the actress from Heretic, who played a Mormon missionary,
Yep.
was,
Sophie
you guys,
Thatcher.
thank you, Sophie Thatcher. Uh, Intrigued. I didn't love that movie, and she wasn't the best actor in the movie, um, honestly, but not bad. And so she's in a movie which I believe came out just this year called Companion,
Mm-hmm.
and it's I thought that I'd gotten spoilers that I wasn't supposed to get, but you can you can totally go into this movie knowing what you know about the movie, and it's going to go in directions that you don't expect. So it was good kind of horror comedy fun with some unexpected twists and turns.
I think the thing that people were frustrated that they revealed before the film came out, I think it's a cooler experience if you go in without knowing it, but it's also like revealed within 20 minutes. So
Yeah.
it's not like you're too far into the movie. But no, it takes some crazy twists and turns. And Jack Quaid is doing some amazing work in a lot of different
Suddenly
things.
everywhere. Yeah.
Yep. Between that and Novocaine that came out this year. Obviously he's riding high off of The Boys, but The Boys is going to be wrapping up. So
Scream
it's very,
5, Scream 5 he was good in.
yeah, Scream 5 too. Um, and he fully
Huh.
embraces him being a Nepo baby. And being like, yeah, it's a lot easier, seeing as he's the child of what Dennis Quaid and Meg Ryan.
He literally looks like a blend of Dennis Quaid and Meg Ryan. It's actually fascinating, but he's just so goddamn likable.
Makes
I'm
sense now that you
sorry, he's
mentioned it.
just
Yeah,
so
he does look like
likable.
them.
Like he had a cameo in Workaholics in the last episode, and he killed it in that one. Like I don't know, I love the guy.
But no, Sophie is. I really look forward to seeing more of what Sophie Thatcher does and things. I thought she was incredible, and Harvey Guillen from What We Do in the Shadows was so funny and companion. Um,
You mean Gizmo?
it's Gizmo,
Gizmo?
Guillermo. Um, but how I always like to wrap up the recommendations, I do new film, watch list film, and rewatching one of my movies that I own. So I have to recommend Ballerina, seeing as I saw this yesterday. And if you love John Wick, basically they reshot the whole entire film with Chad Stahelski taking over as the director. So basically it just feels like another John Wick movie. With Honor de Armas, and she's incredible. They do some of the wildest action in this movie. All I'm gonna say is flamethrowers, kitchen instruments, and grenades.
Oh,
Lots and lots of grenades. So many grenades. This is a wild, bonkers, off the wall action movie. And I think they do a good enough job with the story. You can definitely tell, like in the first act, that they reshot almost the whole entire movie. Because this is what you get when you picked Len Wiseman, who made Underworld, to be one who did the spinoff, and then they had to push the film back a whole year because they had to reshoot almost the whole entire movie. So that's
Surprised
not
he
for
didn't cast his wife.
who's his wife.
Kate Beckinsale, or maybe ex-wife. I don't know. They were
Oh,
married. They were married during
I
Underworld.
don't think they're married now.
Um,
Based off of her, um, based off of her social media, she seems to
okay.
be having a lot of fun by herself. Um, and her friends. So just putting that out there. She's actually a lot of fun to follow on Instagram. But no, it's a ton of fun, and I can't wait for the Kane spinoff with Donnie Yen directing and starring him and Rina Sawayama coming back from
That
John Wick
sounds
Chapter
fun.
4. Can't wait. One film off my watch list. This is a recommend with a caveat. I think this is going to be a really hard film for a lot of people. I'm still processing it. It's called Murmur of the Heart. It's from Louis Malle, French director from like 1971, I think it is. It's a coming of age story of this young man, and you know, his brothers and friends get him like a sex worker to like lose virginity to, and these kinds of things. It's obnoxiously French. So if you've watched a lot of French cinema, you would be surprised with some of the taboo stuff that happens in this. The challenging thing is I would put this in the same category as Licorice Pizza, that there's an interesting dynamic between two characters that I wish they didn't consummate said connection by the end of the movie, because then it makes it weird. Um, and in this particular one, it's Laurent and his mom. Just leaving that out there. It's French. I want to make that very clear. It's French. It's challenging because it's a fantastically directed film and it's a really effective coming of age story. I just wish that it didn't do one particular thing that happened in the movie. So
Just to be
it's
clear,
a
you mean the character and the character's mom?
correct.
Okay, okay.
Yes, I'm very clear that the character that the it's that the actors are not related. It's
Okay.
specifically the main character and his mother have a very interesting relationship in the film. It's challenging because like Pauline Kael gave this like a perfect score, and Roger Ebert gave it a perfect score. And then like I see a lot of people at Letterboxd giving this rave reviews, and then other ones like this was disgusting and despicable. I'm like, I can't argue with either side of this. I would say if you have Criterion Channel and you want to challenge yourself and watch an interesting film, it's certainly interesting. Um, but my last recommendation, which is a rewatch of one of my films, is I'm going to be doing this for the Wasteland Vintage Roadshow, my podcast about my favorite movies with our buddy Alex, who isn't joining us tonight, and that's on the Waterfront. And this film from Ilya Kazan is an absolutely incredible film. It is one of the greatest examples of the method of acting from the Actors Studio with Marlon Brando and Carl Malden and Lee J. Cobb. This is one of like the greatest performances on film you're gonna see from Marlon Brando. It has one of the most iconic, like I could have been a contender. Like that whole scene from this film. It's impeccably directed. It's incredibly written. It's such an interesting film to watch in a time where it's about those being controlled by an oppressive system and the ones that will turn a blind eye and play along, those that will say we need to do something, the few that say we need to do something, and the fewer that will actually do something. And it's such a fascinating film. Has mob stuff and a lot
And
of
it's got
drama.
Stella. How could we forget that? I mean, it seems like he really has an impact on her.
Wow, Joe. Side recommend Streetcar Named Desire if you want to listen to Marlon Brando scream Stella at the top of his lungs.
Oh, I got those two movies confused. Oh my God.
Which is very interesting because both it's Elia Kazan made both of them. Marlon
Jim,
Brando's
you're
in
giving
both
me
of them,
that
and
side
Carl
eye so
Malden is
bad. I love it.
So
You had me questioning everything about my life, Joe. I was like, wait a minute.
it's like, isn't that Streetcar? Stella. Or you can watch Poor Things. And watch
I would
Marlon.
love if like it would be like the same thing as like watching Batman and being like, why didn't he say with great power comes great responsibility?
It's just like but would recommend that. There's our recommendations. That's our discussion of Kiki's delivery service. And that's a wrap on another episode of Welcome to the Wasteland. My next episode is Porco Rosso, which with my friend Susan Kate Haney, who's an actor and filmmaker who I've had on some of my shows and stuff like that. We're going to be talking about Porco Rosso for our next episode. And then really it's just Mononoke, Spirited Away, Howl, Hanyo, Wind Rises, and Boy and the Heron. We're wrapping this up by by August, and then go in 60 weeks of Hitchcock. And there's some cat butt. So
We
there you
gotta
go.
get that
Enjoy
monetization, Shane. We can't show those nudie parts.
It's supposed to be blurring the cat. I blame it on the phone.
To be fair, Secret Lives of Pets got away with it, so you're good.
But from Joe, from Kevin, from Vinny, from Jim, and from Shane, thank all of you out there for always tuning in and supporting your Wasteland reviewer.